Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful for You channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Bold and the Beautiful detonated into a whirlwind of emotional collisions as Remy's long-anticipated coming out as Deke's boyfriend spiraled horrifically out of control, casting shockwaves across Forrester Creations just as Elektra's blind faith in Will Spencer began to crack under Ivy's gentle but unyielding interrogation, creating a tapestry of tension that stretched from the design office to the prison walls where Luna Nozawa stewed in a toxic mix of smug triumph and haunting insecurity. The kind that comes only to women who have burned every bridge and still expect people to carry them across the canyon. It all began earlier in the day when Will and Elektra were in the design office working hard, though in Elektra's telling working hard meant being pressed up against the drafting table with Will's hands tangled in her hair and her blouse halfway untucked as their lips searched like two teenagers who thought passion could fix everything, and Elektra, practically glowing, spoke between kisses about how excited she was that Deke, sweet, endearing, slightly awkward Deke, was finally hosting a celebration in honor of his new position in the company, a gathering during which everyone, including her, would finally meet his beau, the mysterious man he had been dating so quietly that the entire building was buzzing with curiosity. Will grinned and teased her for being so thrilled about a stranger, but Elektra insisted she just had a good feeling, that Deke deserved happiness, that she wanted to support him the way he had supported her during the darkest episodes with Remy, episodes that still visited her in nightmares where his voice slithered like acid dripping on steel, but now she chose to focus on love, on light, on the promise of a peaceful evening filled with laughter, unaware that fate had already decided the night would be many things, explosive, heartbreaking, humiliating, but peaceful was absolutely not on the menu. Meanwhile, down the hall in the main office, Hope and Deke had cornered Deacon Sharp, determined to confront him once more about Sheila Carter, the woman whose name alone could make the air temperature drop 10 degrees, and Hope, with her arms crossed in that way that made her look like Brooke in her most exasperated moods, warned her father that Sheila was pulling him back into the shadows he had fought so hard to escape, but Deacon, visibly tired of having his love life audited by his daughter and Deke, lifted his hands and insisted that things were complicated, that the situation with Sheila may or may not resolve itself soon, but in the meantime all he wanted was a little peace, which of course was impossible because peace didn't exist in a world where Sheila Carter was breathing and plotting. As he escaped with a sigh and shuffled back to the restaurant, Deke and Hope exchanged a look that said more than words ever could: fear, frustration, resignation, and then wandered toward the showroom just as the atmosphere began shifting from festive to uneasy, for Ivy, ever the perceptive observer of human fragility, had sidled up to Elektra and remarked in that cool Australian lilt that she and Will seemed more in love than ever, which Elektra happily confirmed, but then Ivy, whose judgment of men had been painfully honed through years of drama involving Liam, Wyatt, and the eternal Forrester Spencer-Logan triangle, asked, "Is all this stuff with Luna too much to handle?" And the question punched Elektra in the stomach because she had been trying not to think about Luna Nozawa, about the pregnancy, about Will's involvement, about the dark cloud that refused to stop hovering even on days that were supposed to be perfect. Ivy continued anyway, explaining that Will might be a good guy but he had indeed let Elektra down and that Luna wasn't going away, and maybe it wouldn't matter if Luna weren't pregnant, but she was, or at least claimed to be, which meant the potential complications were endless, but Elektra, dizzy with the need to defend the man she loved, held firm and insisted Will was there for her, just like he had been when Remy had turned her world into a haunted carnival of manipulation and fear. But even as Elektra spoke, even as Ivy nodded with a mixture of concern and resignation, Remy was sitting across from Luna in prison, because of course he was, and Luna, wearing that smug little smirk that made everyone from Lee to Steffi fantasize about shaking some humility into her, gloated about Elektra's meltdown over the pregnancy news, describing in wicked detail how Elektra had looked shocked, betrayed, and terrified at the prospect of Will fathering Luna's child, and Remy, surprisingly, didn't share in her glee but instead admitted he felt bad for Elektra, especially given his own history of emotional terrorizing, and yet he was also riding high on the fact that Deke Sharp, whom he had begun idolizing, had called him an amazing son, a phrase so drenched in misplaced affection that Remy practically levitated from his chair with delight, and because of this emotional high he announced he was going to visit Forrester Creations, today, to meet Deke's colleagues, a decision that made Luna raise a brow and mutter WTH because even she knew this was a cuckoo and potentially self-destructive idea, but Remy, blinded by his hunger for validation, was convinced this would be the moment everyone finally saw him as something other than a villain. At Forrester, preparations for Deke's celebration were in full swing, with balloons being affixed, mocktails being served, and whispers circulating through the building more swiftly than rumors at a Forrester wedding. As everyone speculated about the new romantic interest, Katie confided in Ivy that Deke might be dating a model, while Daphne, gliding through the room like a luxury perfume advertisement, conjectured that Deke's mystery partner was someone unexpected, someone intriguing, and Elektra laughed, blissfully ignorant that the universe was about to destabilize her reality so profoundly she would feel the repercussions for months, perhaps years. Even Will appeared anxious, frequently checking his phone, his palms dampening his button-down shirt as if a secret were struggling to escape, and if Ivy had been positioned slightly closer, she might have observed how he flinched at every notification, every sound, every mention of Luna's name. Subsequently, the moment arrived. The doors were opened. Discussions suspended. Heads turned. Then Remy entered. The gasp that rippled across the room was so sharp it felt like a collective stab, and Elektra, who had been mid-sentence, froze like a marble statue, her eyes widening in disbelief, horror, betrayal, and nausea all at once, because the man she had once feared, once escaped, once rebuilt her life after, Remy, was standing right there with a bewildered smile, waving awkwardly at people who had no idea who he was, before Deke rushed over, glowing, grabbing his hand and pulling him forward with the shameless affection of a man in love, introducing him proudly as his boyfriend, his partner, his heart, his everything, and the room went deathly still, like someone had cut the audio track. Even Ivy, usually so composed, blinked rapidly as if her brain couldn't process what her eyes were delivering, while Katie whispered, "Oh my God," and Daphne clutched her chest theatrically, but none of it compared to Elektra, who looked as though the floor had dissolved under her, leaving her suspended above an emotional abyss. Will, perceiving impending calamity, extended his hand towards her, and Elektra recoiled, shaking so violently that she nearly toppled a mannequin. Deke, initially unaware, commenced an exuberant introductory speech, extolling Remy's compassion, fortitude, and intelligence. However, as the whispers intensified and Ivy divulged the truth regarding Remy's history, Elektra, and the ensuing dread, Deke's complexion paled, comprehending too late that his celebratory moment had devolved into a disaster. Elektra's respiration grew labored, her sight obscured, as a panic attack surged within her, overwhelming her with years of trauma. Observing her turmoil, Remy advanced, palms upraised, asserting his lack of intent to harm, claiming he had transformed through therapy, and expressing a desire to atone. However, Elektra flinched as if he were a blazing projectile aimed at her. The crowd erupted, whispers, accusations, gasps, and Will, in a state of panic, embraced Elektra, asserting her safety. However, Elektra, in tears, berated him, demanding to know why he had not forewarned her, why he had concealed the fact that Deke's boyfriend was Remy, and how he could harbor such a secret given her past. Will stammered, claiming he had only discovered the truth moments prior, that he had attempted to speak with Deke but was unable to do so, and that he would never have allowed her to enter this ordeal had he known earlier. Yet, his words felt insufficient and belated, as Elektra felt profoundly betrayed by fate itself. Remy, now visibly distressed, implored for an opportunity to elucidate, but Ivy interposed herself, her tone frigid as she instructed him to retreat, asserting that Elektra owed him nothing, that his presence was toxic. Deke, heartbroken, pulled Remy away to prevent further escalation, urgently questioning, "Why didn't you inform me? Why didn't you caution me? Why didn't you prepare me?" While Remy, suppressing tears, confessed he had hoped confronting his past would be therapeutic, that he never anticipated Elektra's presence, and that he had deceived himself into believing everything would be satisfactory. The consequence was a hurricane. Elektra sank into a chair, weeping as Ivy and Katie consoled her, while Will stood powerless, guilt consuming him as he comprehended that Luna's pregnant turmoil, the distrust Ivy had forewarned, and this calamitous news had converged into a singular, heartbreaking blow. Deke embraced Remy, who succumbed to the burden of shame, and even people unfamiliar with Remy's history could discern that this was not the victorious coming out he had envisioned, but rather a grievous miscalculation that had rekindled old wounds and disrupted relationships. By night's conclusion, friendships were compromised, trust was obliterated, and Electra, formerly the most jubilant individual present, departed in a state of trepidation, questioning her ability to regard Will in the same light again, while Remy's endeavor for atonement had imploded so dramatically that even Luna, upon learning of the calamity from prison, remarked, "I warned him it was a poor decision." Amidst the turmoil, Sheila Carter, observing from an undisclosed location, exhibited a subtle, knowing smile, for chaos was her preferred mode of communication, and this evening had provided it splendidly. Back in the Forrester showroom, anticipation swirls like perfume in the air as Deke arrives, greeted warmly by Hope, Ivy, Katie, Will, Electra, and the surrounding staff, all encouraging him, praising him, reassuring him that he belongs here, that he is part of the family now, and Electra wraps him in a hug, telling him his boyfriend must be special if Deke is glowing this brightly, and Deke, bashful yet radiant, thanks her and hurries off to retrieve the man who has stolen his heart. Will, ever suspicious, mutters that he finds it odd Deke has never once said the guy's name out loud, but Electra gently admonishes him, saying Deke deserves trust, love, and privacy the same way she and Will needed time to rebuild. Deke beams at Remy, telling him how surreal it is to see him here, how magical it feels to imagine working together someday, and how proud he is to show him the place where he is finally building a future. Remy is overwhelmed by the space, by the memories, and by the grandeur of a world he once hurt and betrayed while he steps inside the design office. They discuss dreams, goals, redemption, and second opportunities, and Remy is radiant in the presence of Deke's admiration. Deke then tenderly but confidently takes his hand and guides him toward the showroom, toward destiny, toward disaster. The moment they cross the threshold, silence envelopes the room like a gunshot, icy, absolute, and breathtaking. Every eye widens, and every jaw freezes mid-smile as Remy's face comes into full view. Will's expression instantly transforms into rage, disbelief, and primal protectiveness as he grunts out Remy, in a tone so loaded it sends a chill through even the most composed in the room, and Electra's entire body trembles as she whispers his name over and over, Remy. Remy. Remy, each repetition unlocking another memory she thought she had buried, another trauma resurfacing, another wound reopening before the entire Forrester family, while Ivy, Katie, Daphne, and Hope stare in stunned disbelief, their voices overlapping as they, too, echo Remy's name like a mantra of shock and dread, and Deke, caught between love and confusion, looks helplessly at the boyfriend he thought he knew, realizing too late that Luna's warning, though he never heard it, has already come. True, because this moment is the spark that will ignite a firestorm of betrayal, fury, heartbreak, and explosive revelations that no one in the room is ready to face. The room feels like it has stopped breathing, each second stretching into an eternity as every member of the Forrester family, the Logan clan, and the assembled staff freezes in disbelief, shock, and horror at the sight of Remy standing there, a man they thought they had left behind in the shadows of betrayal, lies, and heartache, and the tension is so thick that it could be sliced with a pair of Forrester scissors, with Will's eyes narrowing into a dangerous glare, his jaw tightening until the muscles ache, the protective instincts roaring louder than logic as he feels Electra tremble in his arms, the woman he loves, the woman he promised to protect from the likes of Remy, now confronted by the man who had once shattered her trust and left scars that were still raw beneath the surface, and Electra's voice is barely audible, repeating his name in disbelief, Remy, 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 as if speaking it aloud might dissolve the nightmare, but it does nothing to calm the storm brewing inside, the memories of past manipulations, the night of betrayal, the fear, the anguish, all coming back in a tidal wave that crashes over her composure, leaving her suddenly fragile, unsure, and gasping for air, and Ivy, always perceptive, glances at Will with concern and fear, realizing the situation is a powder keg, knowing that while Remy may have changed, the old wounds are fresh and the family's patience, like so many Forrester fabrics, is delicate, stretched to the breaking point, and every whispered exclamation from Katie, Daphne, and Hope, their voices overlapping in disbelief, feeds the tension, each syllable hammering at the walls of civility, forcing Deke into a position he never anticipated, caught between loyalty, love, and the crushing reality that his boyfriend's past is intertwined with the person his family has learned to protect and cherish above all, Elektra, and he feels a pang of guilt, a stab of helplessness, and a ripple of fear that his dream of a perfect introduction has collided headfirst with the worst possible outcome. Remy, oblivious or perhaps willfully ignorant of the emotional earthquake he has set off, smiles nervously, attempting charm, trying to smooth over the frozen stares and whispered questions, telling Deke how excited he is to be at Forrester, how grateful he is to meet everyone, how he hopes to make a positive impression, how he never wants to hurt anyone again, how he is changed, but his words fall flat, bouncing off the icy walls of suspicion and trauma, because for everyone in the showroom, history is not so easily rewritten, and for Will, the air feels combustible, charged with the urge to act, to confront, to demand answers, to protect Elektra with every fiber of his being, to unleash all the anger he has kept bottled for years, and the tension becomes almost unbearable, the kind that makes the walls seem to pulse and the lights hum louder, and Elektra, still trembling, takes a step back from Remy, her hands clutching her chest, her breath catching as if the very act of standing in his presence is physically dangerous, because in that instant, he is not just a man from the past, he is a threat, a specter, a reminder of pain she thought she had escaped but now stands before her fully formed and undeniably real, and Ivy quickly steps in, placing a hand on her shoulder, murmuring that she's right there, trying to calm her, to anchor her in reality, but the damage is done. Will is unable to contain himself any longer, the protective side of him, which has been simmering since the moment he discovered the truth about Luna and her pregnancy, and the side that has always vowed to protect Elektra from danger, explodes. His voice, low and dangerous, rises above the whispering chaos, slicing through the showroom. "What are you doing here, Remy? How dare you expose your face?" And Remy flinches, realizing that the room has shifted entirely against him, that the veneer of civility he attempted to maintain is gone, and that he is standing on a battlefield of old grievances and raw emotions. Deke, mortified, tries to intervene, stepping in between them, pleading with Will to calm down, explaining that Remy has changed, that he is a different person now, and that he is someone Deke loves and trusts. But Will is beyond reason, his voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Changed? Do you believe that a few sentences can erase the past? Do you believe that the betrayal, the lies, and the anguish you inflicted on Elektra will simply vanish?" Upon hearing this, Elektra experiences a combination of relief and apprehension. While a part of her yearns for Will to fight and assert the protection she desires, another part recognizes the peril of the escalating confrontation, knowing that a single misstep or ill-advised statement could derail the fragile bonds that have developed between Deke and Remy, thereby undoing all of the meticulous steps taken toward redemption. In a desperate attempt to elucidate his situation, Remy stammers, I have undergone a transformation. I have never intended to cause harm to anyone. Deke is the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to me, and I am eager to demonstrate my uniqueness to everyone," but the words hang in the air, sounding hollow, because everyone remembers too vividly the history, the nights of manipulation, the deceit, the way he had once destroyed trust like a tornado ripping through the Forrester family tree, and Luna's warning echoes in the back of the viewer's mind, prescient, chilling. This moment was always going to blow up in his face, and now the prophecy is fulfilled, because the room has split into factions, Will and Elektra on one side, trembling and furious, Deke caught in the center, anxious and pleading, Ivy and Katie trying to mediate but frozen by shock, Hope calculating the fallout, already thinking of damage control, and Remy, isolated and exposed, realizing the enormity of the miscalculation he made by believing his charm and supposed reform could shield him from history. The inquiries are thrown like knives, and the murmurs of disbelief grow louder. Is that Remy? From the past? I am in awe of his presence. Deke, how did you manage to transport him? And each question drives a wedge further into the fragile space between love, trust, and family loyalty. Deke tries to respond, attempting to reassure, but his voice is drowned out by the storm of emotion, and even he is unable to stop the undercurrent of tension. Elektra, who is beginning to form tears, steps back from Remy completely, shaking her head, whispering, I can't do this. While Will moves closer, almost as if shielding her with his body, eyes narrowed, fists clenched, every muscle coiled and ready. The room feels as though it might erupt into violence at any moment. Then, the air changes once more as Hope steps forward, attempting to recover control. Her voice cuts through the chaos, speaking firmly but calmly, "Everyone, stop. This is not the manner in which we manage matters. It is imperative that we engage in conversation. Mr. Remy, please provide an explanation." Will, inhale. "Electra, you are secure," she assures her. However, the emotional foundation is too unstable to maintain order. Electra's trust is shattered, Will's rage is barely contained, Deke's joy has been crushed by the collision of past and present, and Remy's reconciliation attempt is tenuous, almost impossible, as no one can erase the trauma he caused. The memory of Luna's cold warning, that meeting the Forresters would result in his death, looms like a dark cloud over the room, casting shadows on every word, glance, and heartbeat, knowing that it has occurred today, at this precise moment. Even as the tension peaks, the subtle dynamics of the room, the way Ivy watches Electra, the way Daphne hovers near Katie, the way Deke tries to anchor both his worlds, the way Hope positions herself as peacemaker, the way Will's protective instincts flare, create a complex web of emotion, power, and moral judgment, and Remy, fully aware now that he miscalculated everything, realizes that the road to redemption is longer, harder, and more dangerous than he could have imagined, because Forrester Creations is not just a company, it's a battlefield of legacies, loyalties, and love, and every eye in that room, every whispered breath, every glance, every tear and clenched fist, is a verdict, a judgment, a weighing of soul and character, and Remy's fate now hangs in the balance, teetering between forgiveness and exile, between love and ruin, because one wrong move, one word, one faltering step, and the fallout from this moment will reverberate through the families, the design studio, and the lives of everyone present for years to come, a reminder that the past never truly dies, that mistakes are never easily forgiven, that love, trust, and loyalty are fragile, and that Luna, somewhere in her cell, smiling coldly, was right all along, meeting the Forresters, trying to walk back into this world, would blow up in his face, and now, in this showroom, surrounded by family, friends, lovers, and enemies, that prophecy has come true in the most spectacular, painful, heart-stopping, life-altering way imaginable.